And our new CEO, I think he's been around for a couple years now. He's from Google's e-commerce division. So he's really bringing e-commerce to the forefront of Pinterest. But even before that, even aside from that, it's a platform for people to go to find inspiration, innovation, ways to do, buy, and try. So anything from, creators who are putting together fashion to food to people who are looking to create and sell their art.
Welcome to the Creative Chats podcast with Mike Brennan. Welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artist makers and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. I'd love to invite you to stop by dailycreativehabit.com. I have created all sorts of resources for you because I truly believe that when you create, we all win. So I want to see as many of you stepping into your creativity fully, closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I want to help you do that. So I've created resources like the Daily Creative Habit Journal. I've written a book, Make Fun a Habit. I have all sorts of free resources like this podcast and a Facebook group called Daily Creative Habit. Also, the paid membership for Daily Creative Habit, where we get together with like-minded creators, all pushing in the same direction, encouraging each other, and saying we're going to show up every single day to create something to get our work out there into the world. So if you would like to be a part of any of those things, again, stop by dailycreativehabit.com or simply visit my website, which is mikebrennan.me. Hey, I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like there are so many places on social media that I'm supposed to be, that I have to be, that it can get pretty overwhelming. And admittedly, one of the places where I had started out posting some things, but really have abandoned over the years is Pinterest. And some of that has to do with the fact that I really didn't have a strategy behind why I was going to use it and how to use it well, and making sure that it was something that actually was moving the needle, so to speak. And my guest today is Heather Farris, and she is an incredible just leader in this space of using Pinterest to help drive traffic and sales and make sense of the platform for many of us, honestly. This is a very hands-on kind of episode, how-to, if you will. She gives some great tips and insights on how to leverage this platform so that you can use it to the best of your ability. And even acknowledging, saying, look, we can start small. We can start with some basic things. And so Heather has a great heart. She loves to serve people. You'll hear that in just how she talks about things, and even in her origin story of where this came about and why this was of interest to her. This wasn't simply just a business opportunity that she jumped into, but it came about because she was looking for solutions for herself. And so I think those are some of the best stories to hear about and experiences, and some of the best people to lead into teaching other people what they have learned, so that those who are looking for that information can get it easily and start to leverage platforms like Pinterest. So lean into this episode. Make sure you take some notes. If you need to listen to it multiple times, certainly there's the show notes for you to reference, and be sure to connect with Heather. So without further ado, here is my creative chat with Heather Farris. Well, Heather, welcome to the Creative Chats podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be here today, Mike. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm excited to talk about all things Pinterest today, which I know you're an expert on, but also just explore a little bit of your story, your journey, why that's important, and of course, how that can help all the creative people who are listening. So before we get too far into it, I always love to just turn it back over to the guest and say, look, if you're at a party and someone asks you like, hey, who are you? What do you do? What's your usual kind of little elevator pitch there?
Former accountant turned marketer, and I didn't go to school for marketing. I did not take a single marketing class. Actually, economics were my favorite classes in college. I love politics and current events and nerding out on strategy beyond just Pinterest for how the world works. I love learning. I love history. I'm not a super creative person in the arts or like film or photography or anything like that, but I have such a respect for it because it's not something that I've ever been able to grasp. So that's what I would tell them.
Yeah. Well, and what I hear in there is you have a curiosity
I
and you
love
love
it.
to learn. Yeah. And I always tell people, I'm like, just because you might not have a talent or ability in the performing or visual arts or any of the kind of those kind of arts that people usually tend to think of when they think of creativity, I really believe we're all creative. And so I'm sure the way that you have approached building your business, the way that you've approached solving problems, and it sounds like even learning how to do some things, getting some skill sets that you probably didn't have, and learning
Yeah.
how to lean into that. That's all a part of creativity too. So you are creative.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So dial us back to like where did your journey start with this? I know you said it wasn't you weren't intending necessarily to go in this direction, but like talk a little bit about like how did that develop? Where did the interest come from? And a little bit of the journey context.
Yeah, so my origin story for this job that I have created for myself actually starts back in 2010 when I was newly married and a new mother. I had my first kiddo when I was 20. So I was a baby. I knew nothing about the world. I could barely drive myself to the grocery store, much less cook a meal for my new husband. And we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, this is post 2008, you know, housing bubble burst, economy is in
Mhm.
the tank. And I actually had just moved from Columbia, Missouri, where I was going to college, and I was still in college at this time, to a little town west of Columbia, but east of Kansas City, like in the middle of nowhere. It's just cornfields. And my husband's stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base, and we had literally no money. Like the military makes nothing when you first get started. So I had to teach myself how to cook because I was sick all the time. And as a Midwestern girl, I left the nest far too early to actually gain these skills from my family members. And Pinterest came along. My sister-in-law, I posted on Facebook a third party, those weird third party status updates.
Mhm.
Maybe you don't know, but I mean, circa 2007, that's what we were doing. And I was like, Heather doesn't know how to cook a meal. Can someone help her? And my sister-in-law texted me and she's like, you have to try this platform called Pinterest. All of the things I've been cooking for your brother lately have come from there. And I was like, sign me up, send me an invite. And it was beta only. And it took 2 weeks. I got my invite and I was on and off to the races. I was pinning all the food. And this is right around the time that like the Pioneer Woman was coming around. Like she didn't have brand deals. She just barely had a blog. And a lot of other women were sharing their homemaking and food talent, which I'm so grateful for on Pinterest. And that's where it started. I was just telling my private community yesterday, Mike, that I have cooked over 3,000 recipes to date from Pinterest.
Nice.
So that's my origin story. That's how I got started on Pinterest. Fast forward 6 years from when I started using it, I started searching on there for how to start we didn't call it a side hustle in 2016. We were searching for how to work at home. And I just used it every day as my main search engine. And I went there one day while on a lunch break. I was very unhappy in my accounting job and searched how to make money at home. And this topic of blogging came up. And of course, I knew about blogging because I'd been reading all of these food blogs for years. And I was hooked. I was like, you can make money doing this? Of course you can make money doing this. So I started in on my first blog. I have since archived it because I didn't want to live my life to write about it and quickly pivoted into offering services because I was so good at it. I'd used it every day for 6 years as a consumer and knew what people wanted, why they wanted it, how it should be presented. I just had this inkling of how to use it very well, and I was very good at it. So here we are 14 years later with a thriving business on this platform.
Nice. Love it. Love it. Many of the stories that I hear they come from people trying to solve their own problems, right? They're trying to lean into an experience that has pushed them towards something, and they get more curious about it, and they want to not only then help themselves out of whatever situation, but then help everybody else because they've gained this knowledge, they have this experience, and they're like, why should it end with me, right? So I love
Yeah,
that you did that. In your opinion, and I know that there's probably a kind of generic answer to this, but like in your
sure.
opinion, who is Pinterest best for?
Yeah. A lot of people who are creating content like I do, like you do with your podcast, people are looking, and I'm going to switch into my business brain here for a
Hmm.
second and speak to you in those terms. Um, People are looking for top and middle of funnel content on this platform, but they're also buying from this platform. And our new CEO, I think he's been around for a couple years now. He's from Google's e-commerce division. So he's really bringing e-commerce to the forefront of Pinterest. But even before that, even aside from that, it's a platform for people to go to find inspiration, innovation, ways to do, buy, and try. So anything from, creators who are putting together fashion to food to people who are looking to create and sell their art. I have a lot of artists in my membership, actually, people that are looking to share what they know, like I did. So think top and middle of funnel. There's 24 established categories on Pinterest. I'm working in one right now that's really lesser known. It's sports psychology,
Hmm.
but turns out there's a demand for that topic on the platform. So I'm helping a business owner get started. But that's very generic. What I would tell your audience is if they are at all piqued of curiosity in this topic would be just to go to the platform and search for your own main keywords. So, what do you do? And how do people find you? Go search for that on Pinterest. If your competitors come up, you should at least have an established profile, even if you don't use it.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember encountering the platform, and I think it was really more because some other people had mentioned it. And maybe I stumbled upon it because I was doing a search for either an image or some topic. And I'm sure that it probably led me to that. And then it was the whole idea of, okay, well, use Pinterest to create like mood boards and like, vision boards and things of that nature. And that's certainly something that, people can still do,
Yeah.
in terms of being on the other side of it as collecting things and finding things and sharing, right? And then, thinking like, okay, well, who's here on this platform? Like I heard that there were a lot more of like moms buying things on
Yeah.
there, and so a certain demographic that if you fall within that category, that's certainly a place that you should be. But what would you say to someone who's like, okay, great, like now I have one more platform that I have to deal
Hmm.
with and worry about, right? Because I can hear it already. People are
I
already
do too.
struggling with all keeping up with Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and et cetera. And so what is the thing that people should know about Pinterest that would be like, oh, this could be a game changer?
So I like to tell anyone that asks me this question that not only is it a search engine, but it's a platform that people can find your content for years. So back to what I just mentioned, even if you don't use the platform regularly and you just create a profile and put your content there once, you're still going to be able to be found. So when you're thinking about it from the sense of, sharing on Instagram, how many of your followers are seeing your content right now? And the search on Instagram is horrid.
Yeah.
And now they've introduced that little AI tool into the search bar, which makes it even worse. So when we're countering a platform like Instagram that isn't search friendly, that people are not seeing your content who are following you, and you come across a platform that allows you to search and allows you to drive direct traffic to your website or to your podcast or to your YouTube channel, that kind of opens up another floodgate of opportunity, essentially. So what I would tell them is even if you don't want to use it all the time for your business, or if it's not something you can keep up with, it's not something you can hire someone in your team to do, establish your profile using some really solid keywords that people are going to search for to find you. Park your content there and leave it.
So in terms of the keywords, that would be in the description area, or would it be
Yeah,
within posts themselves, or both?
Both. So in your pin titles, your pin descriptions, your board titles, your board descriptions, even your display name can have a main keyword phrase. So if anyone goes to my Pinterest account after listening to this, and I can include it in the links for you, um, you'll notice that my display name, there's a little phrase behind my name, and that's also a keyword people are looking for. So then my profile comes up in the search bar. So yeah, pin titles, pin descriptions, board titles, board descriptions, and your display name are the 5 most important places to use keywords.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm thinking about my own Pinterest account, which is, don't judge me, please.
No, I won't.
It's kind of been a little abandoned. Like I said, I set it up a while ago and I started using it to post some artwork back then. The problem that I had and kind of continue to have with it is that it's very disorganized. There are several different, boards that I've created in places to repin, other people's stuff and my stuff. And, at this point, I look at it and there are sometimes things that show me like, hey, a lot of people are looking at this. And so I worry about like, well, should I, if I move something, will it affect that? Or if I delete something, will that radically affect my account? I mean, even though it's just sitting there and I'm really not doing anything, like you said, the searchability factor is there. What advice would you have for someone like me who has this thing, but it's disorganized and you're not sure whether or not you should delete things, move things? Does that affect how you show up?
Yeah, so essentially the first question I'm going to answer is one that I get often is should I repin other people's content? The answer is no, and the reason is it artificially inflates your views, especially from a business perspective. Now, if you want to pin other people's content because you want to look at it yourself outside of your business, make secret boards and pin it there. So if it's something on your profile that you don't actually need, that doesn't serve your business in any way, maybe it serves your inspiration or it's research you want to do for later, just move it to a secret board out of the way. Now, this is probably going to impact those monthly views that you see on the front end of your profile, but they were artificially inflated anyways because it's not your content. People are seeing other people's content that you pinned. So we don't really need it there. So in terms of other people's content on your profile, hide it. Your content, though, reorganizing it in a way that is search friendly will only do you good. It will only benefit you in the long term. Now, I wouldn't suggest going back and changing any of the pins or anything like that. I would just suggest going forward, use search friendly optimization. Now, those boards that you created, if they say something like, a retro, just a very simple word, I would get a little bit more strategic with how people are looking for the content on that board. Everything on Pinterest is search friendly, like searchable. So it should be search friendly. So if someone is looking for flower art painting ideas or watercolor flower art painting ideas, you want to use those phrases that people are using. Pinterest already tells you what they are in the autofill. Pinterest search is so similar to Google. So in the search bar, you have autofill. And then in the search results, we have related searches. So if you're already accustomed to using Google, you're not that far off from using Pinterest. So that's kind of where I would say to start, just reorganizing your stuff to be more search friendly and then moving everyone else's stuff that you pinned to secret board.
Okay. So is there any advantage to having something that is a keyword or part of the description that would say be your own type of thing? Like, how sometimes people would be like, I'm going to come up with my own hashtag and use that on Instagram. And then, that'll be my thing. Obviously, if you're the only one who's using it and it's not that popular at whatever point, there may be, is it really worth it kind of thing? I mean, what is your opinion on that?
There's no need to go out of your way to do that, but it's also not going to hurt you. So if it's part of your brand, feel free to use it and express yourself in that way. Now, what I will say is to prioritize your space that you're given first for what you can do to optimize your account. So if you're making a Pinterest pin and you want to include your hashtag, Mike Brennan, on the end, prioritize the first 470 characters of your 500 that you're allotted for Pinterest friendly keywords. And then that last 30 characters, you can prioritize whatever else you want to add on there. You don't have to use all 500, but definitely use more than 30 characters, which is what a lot of people, they won't even put a description in their pins. So if you at least include something, then toss whatever else you want on the end. It's not going to hurt you.
And are hashtags good to use? Is it a no-no? Does it matter?
Quite frankly, they don't matter. The only reason we have them back now, and if you're listening and you're like, oh yeah, hashtags are back on Pinterest, they've come and gone over the years. The only reason they're back now is because that little app they created during COVID called Shuffles that everyone was fighting tooth and nail to get access to. And I don't even hear about it anymore, but you auto import your pins from Shuffles. You can create like little graphics on there. It's a designer's dream app, quite literally. You create your little graphics on there and they can auto import to your Pinterest account. And the hashtags are what you use on Shuffles to search. But on Pinterest, if you just use keywords in place of your hashtags, you're still going to rank for those keywords. So I always tell people, write in sentences that people can read. And if it was a hashtag you were using on Instagram or elsewhere, and that's a search term on Pinterest, just use the word.
Okay, that's helpful. I also want to touch on something else that you kind of said about sharing other people's content and it not necessarily being a good thing. Is there an illustrator friend of mine? He actually does this, and his strategy is more of like, I want to create a board that includes other people's, like say if he's doing logos, other people's logos that he really likes that are high quality, and he's including his own in that.
Sure.
And so his thought is if someone is looking for and searching for these logos, they'll come across this board, they'll see other people's stuff, but they'll also see his. And he tries to make as many things of that board trace back to his website as possible so that it's driving traffic. It's not simply just a dead end of like, well, here's some things to look at. Is that an acceptable strategy or is there, deterrence to that?
Yes and no. So yes, in the fact that it's not that you shouldn't pin other people's content. You can, absolutely. It is a collaborative platform in that way. It's just a lot of creators get so caught up in pinning other people's stuff, thinking that's going to jump them to the front of the line when in reality, it really doesn't. So with your illustrator friend, if he's pinning other people's logos and his own, I think that's great. Now, optimize the board that you're pinning those logos to. And then if someone uses the search filter of minimalist logos or minimalist hand-drawn logos, and they use the filter to search by board, and then they find his board, that's great. That's where they're going to see all of the things on his board. Now, where they might not see the other things on that board, including his pins, is if they're only using the Pinterest search feature that shows pins, which is by default. But then it brings us back to the question of, is my content being seen? And in relation to what I also pinned, and there's this feature called related pins. So even in boards, it shows this way. So when you open up a pin, so one of his logos, we pop it up on the screen, called a pin click. It used to be called a close-up, but it's where you click on a pin and you look at it closer, but you haven't clicked through to the website. So you're still on Pinterest. If you scroll down slightly, it's called related pins down below. And that's where those other things that he pinned might be located. Because Pinterest is organizing things that are related, that have similar keywords or similar aesthetics, they're very visual in that way. That is actually a great benefit to him.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, it's so fascinating when you get into this and you think about how many different ways you can use it. And really, I would think, as long as you have the correct strategy behind it and you're not simply just doing things kind of like, thoughtlessly repinning and posting and doing whatever, you're probably ahead of the game anyway, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And is there like, in terms of like the ability to sell things on Pinterest, like let's say, I have artists who are listening to the podcast right now and they're thinking, okay, I'd love to upload, photos of my art and to be able to sell through there. Is that a clean and easy way? Is it better to have it go out of Pinterest and kind of trace it back to your website? Like, what is kind of a best practices case?
Yeah, so Pinterest isn't actually a platform that accepts any payment. It's a platform
Okay.
that directs traffic to your destination. So it's basically just a train carriage to your house on the internet. So whether that's Etsy, Redbubble, or Shopify, when you own your own website, you ultimately are doing what you said, uploading your photos of your art and then linking it back to those listings. A little nitty gritty for you though is if they're one of a kind pieces, I would tell you to make sure you have categories set on your website. So I'm very familiar with Shopify, but also WordPress. So creating a category for that piece of art, but then also having another category that's like formerly in the store, like you know, it's old. It's an
Right.
archive. We
Yeah.
don't have it available anymore. That way you don't end up with the dead links on Pinterest, but people can still find your art, be inspired, get to your store and see other things available. And then after you sell that piece, you just change the category and you put it in that not for sale category anymore. But it's work that you maybe want to still showcase on your website. That way, again, like you don't end up with those dead links and people can still find you.
Yeah. That makes sense. Wait, is there something maybe that stands out to you in terms of like a creative use of Pinterest that you've seen that you're like, ooh, this is actually something more people should be doing?
Yeah, actually, I was just looking for art for my daughter's bathroom. We just have been remodeling our home this last year. And we live in Arizona, we have big skylights. And I chose a paint color in their bathroom that actually, ironically enough, changes color throughout the day. Like it's a mystery when you walk by there, what color it's going to be. And I was looking for artwork that would stand out against all the different shades that this blue turns throughout the day. And I found this artist that was sharing behind the scenes videos, just like Instagram reel style videos of the creation process of the art. So it was like before with all the paint on the desk and it's just dirty, and then the after, but then everything in between. And it was just so inspiring. And I pinned it for later. So once we're through replacing all the flooring, I can actually afford to buy an original piece from this man because it's not cheap and it shouldn't be. But it was so beautiful and it's a big piece and I really want to buy it. So that's actually a super creative way. And a lot of people don't put in the effort to create videos like that. But if you do have the capability or you're already doing it, it's guaranteed to gather attention, get saves, which is the number one metric or action you want to happen on Pinterest to know that your work is actually being seen and people are interested in it. And then ultimately get traffic to your site.
Yeah. So a lot of behind the scenes stuff, a lot of other things other than just here's the final product, here's the thing I'm selling,
Correct.
here's a
Yeah.
portfolio, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about in terms of like stories and things, because some other platforms, they're really big on, tell as many stories as you can. Is that something that we should be doing on Pinterest as well?
Maybe in the form of blog posts on your website or videos or podcast episodes, and then you convert those into like a long form podcast or like a transcript of the podcast or blog post. Sorry, I misspoke there. And then driving traffic to those and telling your story in that format because Pinterest users have been trained since the very beginning to read blogs. That was kind of in my origin story I mentioned to you. So the reading blogs, the listening to audio or video, that's a really great way to tell your story, but then you can create Pinterest pins to link back to those wherever you host.
Got it.
So, yeah,
And is like micro content, like short video form, is that something we should be doing on Pinterest as well?
absolutely. If you have the ability to do it, Pinterest has been accepting video for a long, long time. 4 seconds to 4 minutes is your timeline. So, a really great feature right now that was recently introduced to Pinterest again is the auto import with Instagram. So, you can actually claim your Instagram account and auto import your content from Instagram to Pinterest. So, utilizing that short form video kind of concept of repurposing your content that you're already doing all this hard work for on Instagram over to Pinterest is a really great way to do that. You are going to need to do a little legwork once you get it over to Pinterest because you want to be found. You want your content to be search friendly. And what you put on Instagram is not going to be search friendly generally for Pinterest. So what you're going to do, Mike, is it auto import the content from Instagram, but then you're going to go in and edit your reel, which is now called a pin. Sorry for the confusion. You're going to go in and edit your pin, and you're going to change the destination to be from Instagram to your website or your podcast or your shop listing, whatever that destination should ultimately be, because the user experience from seeing that content on Pinterest to seeing it again on Instagram is not great. So you don't want to direct traffic to Instagram, but you also don't want to be punished by Meta for sending traffic off site. They don't like that. So we can repurpose the content we already have using the auto publish feature, edit it slightly, redirect it to our domain, and then you're using that content again without having to do all the legwork all over again.
Yeah. I do want to stress to anyone listening right now who may be thinking, this feels very overwhelming. This feels like a lot of things to do, but I'm glad that we're talking about options. I'm glad we're talking about some scenarios that people could do should they want to. But if someone is feeling overwhelmed right now and they're thinking, okay, I'd like to kind of step into this lightly. What is a great first step besides setting up their profile and doing one pin or something? What is something manageable for someone, would you suggest?
Something manageable is simply going to the platform, opening the search bar, and looking for your most recent product you listed for sale or the most recent piece of content that you created. I usually coach people through how to find their audience on Pinterest in these two ways. So you know how people are finding you on Google generally. I want you to use the same search terms that you would use on Google on Pinterest and find how people are finding that piece of content or that product that you're selling. And then I simply want you to think about what you already have in your Canva account or your Adobe Illustrator account for creative for that piece of content or that product, and just repurpose that image for Pinterest or that video for Pinterest. Now, I know you said beyond just creating pins, but that really is the place to start because you have to have pins in order to be seen. You don't have to have boards anymore to be seen, but I wouldn't suggest doing that. You need boards because boards are how your content gets indexed. So that's really the starting point though, Mike, is to get your boards strategically created using those keywords you found in your search, your research, and then creating pins for it. But just repurpose what you already have as far as assets. Now, the optimal size is Instagram sizing, truly. If you can use the same canvas size that you use on Instagram for Reels, or it's just a 2-to-3 ratio.
Got it. And in terms of like people always asking with all social media, because it's the moving target, right? Like, how many times a day should I post? How often? What's the rhythm of what I should post? Does it matter what time of day? Like those kind of questions. Is there any insights you can share in regards to that?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what time of day, unless you're just so concerned about what time of day to post because you're only posting like in the moment. I would kind of steer you back to who your ideal audience is. If your ideal audience are mothers my age, in their 30s or whatever, and they have kids at home right now, they're not on Pinterest during the day. They're on Pinterest during nap time and in the evenings or before, when they're having their coffee in the mornings. So that's kind of the direction I would point you back to. But truly, it doesn't matter what time you post. I just care that you post. How many times a day is going to be how much content are you creating right now, and what's your bandwidth? Can you spend 1 hour per week on your Pinterest account, and how fast are you with design? Now, your audience being very creative, a lot of artists, they're probably in one of two camps. They're either really quick with it or they're very nitpicky about it and they want everything to be perfect.
Yeah.
If you're in the first camp that you're really quick about it and you don't care and you can just get it out, then chances are you could probably do 2 to 3 things a day with the assets you have already and then just repurposing them. Now, if you are slower, and that's fine. If, I have people that only pin one thing a day. And I also have people in my community that pin maybe two, 3 things a week. All I care about is that you're parking your content on the platform and you're making it search friendly. So I want you to do what feels good for you, what you can manage. And I don't want you to stress yourself out to do it and get burned out, because your mental health matters and your happiness and what you're doing outside of your business matters. So lean into what you have time to do And if that's one thing a day, I love it for you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that because I'm sure that that is giving a sigh of relief for a lot of people and just going like, okay, good. Thank you for saying that. I feel
Yeah.
validated, you know?
There's a scale of growth, right? With any
Yeah.
platform. There's people that say you should post 3 reels a day on Instagram. I will never be in that camp. I can, though, watch a movie, sit down and watch Bridgerton or whatever you're into right now, and I can make Pinterest pins while I watch a movie. That's what I was doing this morning before like official work hours because my kids are asleep. So I was making client pins for July, and I'm just in my pajamas. And that's the great part about Pinterest is you don't have to have your hair and makeup done. You don't need to have a nice shirt on. You can just be that rock troll, which is me all the time behind the scenes, just watching a movie and making Pinterest pins. It's honestly a vibe.
Awesome. Is there anything that you wish was a part of Pinterest that isn't?
Yes, I wish there was a filter for AI.
Talk about
And I
that.
just made this suggestion this morning
Hmm.
to a friend of mine. So, right now on Instagram, this is a big deal in the photographer community. If you use generative fill at all with Photoshop or anything like that, it's in your metadata for your images. It's auto exported when you uploaded it to Pinterest or to Instagram. It's automatically marked as made with AI, even though it wasn't made with AI. AI assisted in the process. However, right now, there are a ton of people on Pinterest. And I honestly think most of them are bots or scammers that are uploading hideous pictures of AI homes and like food and like models and fashion and stuff. It's just trash. And I was just searching for an English rolled armed sofa a few weeks ago, and I could not get anything to come up except for these ugly AI photos. So there's no feature to filter them out right now. And there's no way for like, you can't just automatically be marked as these are AI images or not. So that was a suggestion I actually made in a meeting this morning that I had with a friend that we should have that availability, that feature availability of like, this is AI, like fully generated with AI. I don't even care. I don't want photographers to be punished because they use
Hmm.
generative fill because I love your photography and how it was edited. I could never do that. Please make it beautiful. But the fully made with AI Midjourney stuff, I hate it so much.
Yes. I think that's very much the popular opinion where you know, you're right. It floods things to the point where it's hard to find the things you're looking for and the things of value, and more isn't always better.
Yep.
It's the right things at the right time that you want. And certainly, I know there's all people who AI is just like the hot topic right now, and I think it
Sure.
will be for a while until the dust settles on some things. But it's always interesting to see how it works its way into most conversations these days. You know.
It is, honestly. And so that was a feature suggest I made this morning. So if we could just have a little filter where we could filter out the AI content that we don't want to see, I would love that.
Yeah, yeah. That's certainly a great suggestion. And I've loved all the tips and advice that you've given us today. Very practical, very helpful. And just hearing your story of where this all came from, why it's important to you. I think that helps people understand that this isn't just like a, sales pitch kind of thing or getting in there
No.
and doing just because, it's one more thing we need to be doing. But just seeing how, really this came out of a real world solution for you and how it made a difference in your life. And this could be the right solution for someone else right now who's listening and going like, I hadn't actually thought about this as an option. And this could be the turning point for somebody else, for them to have light bulb moments and for them to get some traction on a platform maybe where they're not on right now. And so thank you for sharing all of that stuff.
It's my pleasure, Mike. Thank you for allowing me.
Yeah, I'd love to just end with a question of, is there anything that, and this isn't necessarily, Pinterest related or even business related, but is there something maybe that someone told you along the way in your journey that you return to again and again, as far as a piece of advice, something, a quote, or something that has impacted you to a deeper level in how you do things, why you do things.
So I'm a sharer. I'm a giver. I overgive. I could make so much more money and I don't want to because I just love to help people. So some of the advice that I received earlier on in life was, and it wasn't even necessarily like verbal advice. It was more of like just seeing how people live, is to just give back. People need help. People want
Mhm.
help, but they oftentimes don't know how to ask for it. I definitely was one of those people. So I just love helping people and I love to see what they do with that, whether it's information or, me going in and doing their Pinterest account for them because I just feel like it. I'm doing that
Yeah.
for a friend right now. So that would just be what I would say is just look for the goodness in people and just give help where you can because it'll come back to you. It always
Mhm.
does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love that. Love that. And along those lines, if someone's looking to connect with you further, maybe they're looking to hire you or just ask you some questions or just connect with you in general, where are the best places for them to find you? Obviously,
Two
Pinterest.
Obviously Pinterest, but I will not respond to DMs on Pinterest, so don't
Okay.
message me there. Instagram is obviously a really great place. Who
Mhm.
doesn't use Instagram? I pretty much just use it for DMs and stories about curtains and things these days. But if you do want to ask a question after listening to this, that is the first line of defense of where you can actually get me. But if you're just looking for information because you want to flirt around with the platform, maybe dip a toe in, heatherfarris.com. It's Farris. We're not Ferris Bueller over here. So heatherfarris.com is my website. You can go and read. It's a full Pinterest course over there. Like if you want to know anything about the platform, you don't need to buy anything. You can just read my blog and then eventually go over to the YouTube channel. It's there too. But that's it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I am highly suggesting that people take you up on that. Go learn from you and connect with you. I love how you're showing up. I love that you're helping. I love that there is just, you're leading with light and love, and that's evident. And so thank you for that. And I do hope that it continues to just come back tenfold upon you as you help people. So thank you so much today.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.